Um, thank you. Okay, we're back. Oh, I'll tell you, this was not me. Okay, I didn't do this. Don't blame me. This never happened before. Never had. Okay, now I just got beamed again. Okay, we'll wait till everything gets together, because I never had a problem like that, where the whole thing went. You know, like a couple times during the Pat McDonough show, I stream all the time with Ron Savage and Pat McDonough. It'll boom, that screen will go blank and says we can't. We're having bad transmission. However, that light's still on. I'm still rolling, and I still keep going. Except I can't see myself, but you get to see me, so you have the gift. You have the gift. So, anyway, we're talking about Poe and his stepfather passed, and he left him nothing.
But he gave money, several $1,000s to his illegitimate children. What a guy! You know, what a guy! What
That's
a nice
like
guy!
the dirty stepchild. He said, "You treat me like the bad stepchild," or whatever they say there.
So Poe left Richmond. He joined the Army, the Sergeant Major Artificer, and I was going to explain that an artificer is one who makes the bombs.
Oh.
And he was the one responsible for the calculations and the mixing the right chemicals, because when you fire a cannonball, you don't want it to explode a few feet in front of you. You want it to go to the enemy and explode. And if you don't put enough combustible materials, the cannonball explodes too soon, or whatever. So Poe was so good at it that he achieved the rank of Sergeant Major.
Jeez.
So, but Poe decided that the Army was no place for a young man. So he left the Army, got into West Point, and he thought that because of his previous Army experience and his limited college experience, he could go through West Point 6-7 months, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, you don't go to West Point and say, "Listen, I'm only here for a few months, guys." You know, so he couldn't get out. So the only way he could get out was to not do anything. So he just neglected his duties, and they had no choice but to boot him out. However, the commander of West Point in later years said that when Poe was there and applying himself, he was an excellent student, excellent soldier. But Poe said, West Point is no place for a poor man. So he left West Point, came to Baltimore, and the only family that he had here was his Aunt Maria Clem. So it was a matter of knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, I'm related to you," and she said, "Come in."
Oh, there it is.
You know, so that was his introduction to Baltimore.
Wow.
And at that time, she was living in Little Italy.
Did
you know that there was another Poe house in Little Italy? Well, there used to be.
I had
High
no
and
idea.
Exeter Street, torn down in 1920.
Oh, man.
So they lived there, then they moved to Amity Street, 203 North Amity.
Right.
And they were starving. This was not a happy time period. So despite poverty and starvation, this is where Poe began writing short stories. He was writing poetry, but really not going anywhere with that. So he thought, what should I write about? So he did what a lot of writers today do. He opened up the newspaper, and he was looking for something that would catch his eye. And he read stories about people that were being buried alive. Accidentally now.
Accidentally.
So they say. Accidentally.
So they say.
So he thought, hey, why not?
Right.
So Poe wrote his first true horror story right here in Baltimore called Berenice. And this was a gruesome story of premature burial, grave desecration, mutilation, obsession. It was a fun story.
Oh, that sounds great.
Well, the public didn't think it was so great.
Oh, no,
they said, too gruesome, you can't write about these things, you know, you got to do something about it. And you know what Poe said? He said, I was only giving the public what they wanted. But even Poe said, maybe I went too far with this story. So he deleted 3 paragraphs that the public said, no, you can't write about this thing. So he deleted the paragraphs, and everybody was happy.
Yeah.
But Poe discovered one important thing. people like to be scared.
Yes.
They like to be scared. And we haven't changed.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So people like to be scared. So he continued writing horror stories. He continued writing about being buried alive, because it did happen, because that's what we wanted.
Absolutely.
But once in a while, Poe would deviate and write a comedy, write some science fiction. Now, listen.
That's something else.
What I'm about to tell you does not leave this area, okay? So
Oh, everybody, don't say nothing.
Now, not all of Poe's comedies were funny. And his science fiction was so advanced, people said, "What are you talking about? Traveling to the moon in a balloon? You're crazy."
Wow.
So, but his comedies, he tried, but they just weren't that funny. He kept going back to horror, murder, torture, obsession, black cats, telltale hearts. Not because he was obsessed with it, we were.
Right.
Okay? So he tried other things, but we kept pulling him back into the horror story.
And there are a lot of people that think that Poe he was obsessed with that, but in contrast, he was giving
We were.
people what we're the ones. We're the ones.
Yeah,
Wow.
we were.
Wow.
So when people read just Poe's horror stories,
Yes.
they go, "Wow, this guy must have been crazy." And then when you look at his pictures,
Yeah.
he looks. He looks like the kind of guy that would write about telltale hearts and black cats.
Yeah, exactly.
But in that time period, when they took your photograph, a daguerreotype, you didn't smile. You just stood there, and for 3 or 4 minutes, and they would take your picture. Everyone looked kind of grumpy.
Exactly,
Yeah.
with their hand like this.
Yeah, exactly. So Poe is known today for writing horror stories.
Yes.
Really good
Man.
horror stories, influencing other writers like H.G. Wells, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
And Conan Doyle said if it wasn't for Poe's detective, C. Auguste Dupin, there would be no Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
Stephen King, Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh,
Alfred
boy.
Hitchcock said that if it wasn't that for reading Poe, he never would have wrote the way he did. Alfred
Jeez,
Hitchcock.
whiz.
So Poe really made a profound influence on writers that we are all familiar with. But the question is, what kind of guy was Poe? I mean, okay, so he wasn't crazy, obsessed. What kind of guy was? What kind of guy do you think he was?
Jeez, whiz. I was looking at the guy who's been through some hardships. I think it was creative. I think it was creative. Some people I know that are creative. They're my friends, but they're quiet. They always look at me like because they're like, man, but they keep to themselves, but they're not underground like that. I think he would have been, because he went out drinking in bars, didn't he?
Well, that's debatable. But
Because a lot of people think he was a drunk. I don't think
well,
that. I
no,
wouldn't think
they
that
say
at
he
all.
was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Now, he did have a problem with alcohol. He was the kind of person that if he had a sip of wine,
Mm-hmm.
that was enough to, get woozy, and if he had another sip, he couldn't handle it. Now, there are medical terms for people like that, but it's too easy to say, "Oh, alcoholic, yeah, he drank like a fish, whatever."
Exactly.
He went times like a year or two without drinking. But remember, when you went out to dinner to eat, it was in a tavern.
Yes. Yes.
They didn't have McDonald's or anything like that. You went to a tavern. That's where they had the food. And he knew he had a problem, and sometimes he would have that sip thinking, maybe I can handle it.
Yes.
But there are people that can drink and drink.
Excuse me 1 minute.
Sure.
Listen to this. I'm getting something set up. You're gonna die, right? But he's gonna tell you a story, and then I'm gonna come back and give you a
I'll
test.
just continue to talk.
Yeah,
All right.
please,
Okay,
yes.
there you go.
Yeah.
So Poe was the kind of person that slight amount of alcohol was enough to go right to his head. Now, there are people that can drink and drink and drink, and you would never know they drank so much. Poe was not like that. So yes, Poe had a problem with alcohol, but to say that he was drunk all the time, that's really stretching it. So Poe lived in Baltimore. He wrote his first horror story here. From Baltimore, he moved to Philadelphia. That was a big newspaper town. From Philadelphia, he went to New York because that's where you go to make it big. So he went to New York and back to Philadelphia, then finally to New York again. So he was constantly looking for better work, a better paying job. And he never really found it because he was abused by the publishing companies. They knew he was desperate. They knew that he needed money. So they would pay him a very small salary. And they would also pay him in books. Now, you try paying the rent with books and see how far you go. So they took advantage of him. And other writers of the time period were also ripped off by the publishers. So Poe wanted to do more with his life. He wrote poetry, of course. He wrote what has been called the world's most perfectly constructed poem, The Raven. And when he wrote The Raven, he became an overnight sensation. His nickname became The Raven. And he was so popular that he would walk down the streets of New York and children would run behind him with sticks and they would hit his feet with the sticks. And you know what Poe did? He would turn around and go, "Nevermore!" And the kids would be screaming down the street and he would be laughing. So the man had a sense of humor. Now I asked Ron what he thought, what kind of man, what he thought, what Poe was, what kind of guy he was. Poe was probably the nicest guy you would ever want to meet. In his home, you would visit him and he would shake your hand. They didn't have much, but whatever they had, they would share with you. And there were people that wrote that there was so much love in the house between him and his wife Virginia and his aunt Maria Clem. But if you saw Poe on the street, you would say, "Hey, Edgar, how's it going?" And he would look at you as if to say, like, "Do I know you?" And he would have this air about him. We don't know why he did that. And people would go, "Well, that's strange. I just saw him at his home and he was shaking my hand. Now it's like, 'Do I know you?' kind of attitude." So I guess he wanted to have that aura of a writer, of a poet, and it just confused people sometimes. So he wrote poetry. He was a literary critic, and at that he excelled. His nickname was the Tomahawk Man because of his brutal, slashing reviews. If he reviewed a story and he didn't like it, he would trash the person who wrote it. We're talking about Poe, the Tomahawk Man. As a critic, he was very brutal, and he showed no mercy.
Whoa.
If he reviewed a book and it was bad, but on the other hand, if he reviewed a story, and maybe it wasn't the best story, but Poe saw that the writer had talent, okay, he would say something like, "Well, this isn't the best story around, but this author, he could be a great writer one day. We have to keep an eye on this guy."
So he was like Simon on that show.
Yeah. So he would offer encouragement, but if he wrote a story and it was awful, and the person who wrote it was saying, "Oh, I'm a great writer," he would go after that person, and he would make fun of that person, make fun of the story, and nobody would buy the book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So he made a few enemies that way.
Nah.
And he said, "Well, I was only criticizing the story. You didn't quite understand."
Right.
When you
right.
attack the person, they get upset.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So So he tried, I was explaining to the audience that he tried other things besides horror stories. A literary critic,
Mm-hmm.
Poet, newspaper editor, publisher. But again, I said it before, we kept pulling him back.
Pulling him back.
into
Just
the
when I
horror
thought I was
aspect.
out.
Right.
Pull him back.
You got it. You got it. And he would write. There were hundreds of writers in
Mhm.
post-time period.
Yeah.
I can't think of Hawthorne, Longfellow, maybe one or two others, but all these writers that people were saying, oh, these are great men, they're forgotten. But Poe, his stories are just as popular today. They're timeless.
Timeless.
And here's a good example, The Black Cat. Okay.
Wow.
Now, there are three themes, and I when I would talk to school groups, I tell them there are three themes in The Black Cat that are relevant today.
Mm-hmm.
What are they? And they're scratching their head. I don't know. The first one is animal abuse.
Oh.
Number 2, spousal abuse. And number 3, alcohol abuse.
No.
Okay.
You know,
So then they go, oh yeah, hey yeah, that's right. And suddenly they look at Poe's stories. It's like the lights come on, and
Yeah.
they go, I understand now.
the hidden meaning in the story is beautiful.
Exactly.
Okay.
So and when I talk about John Allen, unfortunately, many of these children deal with an abusive parent or an
Mhm.
abusive home situation.
Ooh.
And when I talk about John Allen, belittling Poe, making fun of him, and some of the kids, they don't actually in front of other students say, hey, that's happening to me. But after I'm through talking to them, they will come up to me saying, Mr. Jerome, I understand what Poe went through because I'm in a situation where, this and that or the other. And they can relate to Poe, and they read his stories, they have more understanding. I could talk for hours about this.
It's I could say, and I speak for myself. I could sit for hours and listen, and I'm sure everybody out there can too, because we are from the hometown. We're from the home team, and you can't fake that. You can't fake that at all.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that Edgar Allan Poe was a genius. He was light years ahead of everyone else. Space travel. You read about space travel?
Yeah, that's
that's
wild.
But he was a good guy. He had a good heart, and despite poverty, despite the literary abuse he suffered from New England writers, despite starvation, being ripped off by publishers, he still persevered. He still said, I want to be a writer, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm getting back to students now. When I tell them that it would be very easy for Poe to go, I can't take it anymore. I can't do this. I'm becoming a plumber. I don't know. That he didn't do that. He learned. He had a mind that he would retain everything. He never finished college. He's writing about space travel.
Right.
You
right.
know, and kids, it gives them. It's like, oh, gee, if Poe can do it, I can do it.
New sense of perseverance for sure.
Yeah, Poe didn't sit and cry and say, "Oh, poor me, I don't have any money." He went out and tried to do something about it.
They sure did.
And I try to impress upon people, especially young people today, they're so upset over the slightest thing.
Oh yeah.
That you can't give up. You got to persevere. Things will get better, and don't think like everything's happening right today. Persevere. Don't let other people pull you down.
Right.
Someone calls you a name, and they made fun of Poe because he was from the South, and I'm sure it bothered him, but he didn't cry about it. He persevered. He continued learning about things.
That's right.
He wrote, and he wrote for the audience, and he became famous. Didn't become wealthy, but his name was a household name.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Didn't he stay with the paper? He was with one paper in town, and he did a couple stories that.
Well, he wrote. He was hired as an editor for the Southern Literary Messenger. This was early in his career, and that was a big newspaper in Richmond.
Yeah.
And it was
okay.
very well respected literary magazine. He was hired as an editor, And
Yes.
he brought the circulation. He like tripled the circulation. But he had problems with the publisher, and Poe knew what he was doing.
Mhm.
He knew what he was doing was right because sales increased, but the publisher was like, "Oh, I don't want you to do that, Edgar. I want you to do that." And Poe would say, "It's not going to work. I'm the boss here. You know, you're going to do
There
what I
it
gotta
is.
do."
There it is. How many of you heard that?
Yes, yeah. So Poe left, and he was editor of various newspapers,
Mhm.
and they never paid him enough.
Mm.
And he would bring up the circulation. Poe knew what he was doing,
Mm.
and I can relate to that because I've done many things in my life, and I would like to think that I'm smart. Okay, and when it comes to like museums and museum practices and exhibits and how to speak to people,
Mhm.
how to greet people, how to treat people right. When someone says, "Oh, Jeff, you don't want to talk to people like that," all you have to do is just say, "Can I help you?" And it's like, no. Don't tell me. I'm digressing here a moment. Bear with me.
Yeah, good enough.
My first job was with Hoschel Combs, the old department
wow,
store.
man.
Started very young. And I learned from Hoschel Combs that the customer is always right. They were there because of the customer.
Yes.
You never know who's walking up to you. You treat everyone like they were a king or a queen.
Mhm.
Because we exist, all these department stores exist because of the public.
Because of the public safety.
If someone comes up to you and they say, "Well, I don't, give you a hard time," you say, "Yes, sir, how can I help you? What can I do to make this better for you?" And that was ingrained in me, thank goodness, okay? That work ethic stayed with me
That's great.
throughout my life. You treat people the way you want to be treated,
Yep.
and I'm sure in your life you had people really treating you nasty, really treating you bad, didn't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
And you could have brought yourself to their level, but you don't. Because when people treat me like that, I know I'm better than they are.
That's right.
Why should I? They're unhappy. Let them be unhappy. I'm not going to get into their world.
Right. I'm not going to become them.
Yeah. So there are things that I do very well, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm not going, at my age, I'm not changing. I will always, when I was at the Poe House, from the day I started working to my last day at the Poe House, that last day people would come to visit, I was just as courteous, I was just as friendly, even though I didn't like losing my job. I could have been a grouch and said,
Yeah.
but no, I greeted people with a smile, tell them all about Poe, and I'm that kind of person.
Folks, I'll tell you, there has to be karma with that, because there's a diligence, there's I don't know, it's magic within yourself to rise above that, because it's so easy to say, "Get out of here. You want to be, is my last day of job? You're kicking me out for something stupid? Or you're kicking me out because this other guy's son's coming in?" Oh, but that's great. It's
You're
hard.
right.
It's hard.
Don't let them drag you down
Yeah,
to
oh,
their
geez,
level,
Louise.
because I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm happy. You happy over there? Yeah.
You better be. So what were we talking about? Poe.
Poe.
Yes, Poe. Listen, before I forget, and whenever I'm in a situation like this and I talk about Poe, I start with, I try to be focused, but when I talk about Poe, I start going in that direction, this direction, in that direction. Then I
You
forget
see
where
how
I
easy
started.
it is?
Yeah.
Because everything about Poe is interesting, and everything about Poe leads to other canyons of thought and truth, and it's just, I tell you, it's something
since 1976,
Mm.
way back when, Baltimore Bicentennial.
Bicentennial, exactly.
That's when I was really introduced to Poe. In 1978, I became the first curator of the Poe House in
Wow.
Baltimore, and here it is, 2020, and I'm just as excited talking about Poe. I have all this Poe stuff in my head,
Mhm.
and I like sharing it.
It's
I-
great. I think it's even more special when you know something, you can share it to somebody,
Yeah.
and you see the magic, the flame of interest building up in them, and that right there. It's like when I make a good dish, because I was telling Jeff a little earlier, I love cooking, and I say, "Here, try this." You're like, "Man, that's good," and I'm happy to all get out, because I know that you love much stuff. And it's like telling a story of Poe. It's like you see, and that's something that you don't get rid of. That's it. And then you know that person's going to share that as
Yes.
well. Exactly.
Quick story about when I was at the Poe House.
Sure thing.
There was a knock on the door, and I opened it, and there was this Asian man with a young Asian woman. She was 15 or 16.
Mhm.
So they came in, and whenever someone like that comes in, I talk a little bit slower, enunciate a little bit more, and I found out that they were from mainland China. This was, how long, 10 years ago maybe?
Wow.
Mainland China. And I said, "Oh, are you here on business, government business?"
Mhm.
"Oh, no, I bring daughter to Baltimore for Poe House.
Oh wow.
Daughter
man.
poet, China." And I was following what he was
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And there's the young lady, and I said, wasn't busy, so I said, "I'm going to give you a tour."
Oh,
Normally I
man.
let people walk around, and I gave them a tour, and came downstairs, and at that time we had just received a chair donation that belonged to Edgar Allan Poe. So I told the young woman that before you go, I want you to do something for me. And she's, what? I said, I want you to sit in this chair. And she was like, why? I said, this chair belonged to Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh.
And she went, she's like, no. And I said, it's okay. No, not worthy.
Oh
And I'm
boy,
going,
oh boy.
not worthy. I'm like,
Wow.
she was saying, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, one day you're going to be a great poet in
Yes.
China.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to sit in this chair. I want you to put your hands where Edgar Allan Poe put his hands, and I want you to sit there for a few minutes. And she was like this, not worthy. And her father said something in Chinese,
Wow,
and I said,
man.
listen, you have to sit. I will be hurt if you don't sit. And then
Yeah.
she sat. So she sat down like she was sitting on glass. And then she started to get up. I said, no, sit.
Yeah.
And she finally stood up, and a tear was coming down.
Oh wow.
And I said, listen, when you
Wow.
come back to the United States, I
That's
want you to come
devotion.
visit me.
Please
You're
do.
going to be a great poet.
Definitely.
And I shook her hand, and
Boy,
I
oh
gave her a
boy.
hug. And on the way out, her father said to me, cannot thank you what you do for my daughter. Cannot thank you for what you did for my daughter.
Can't thank you enough. I tell you,
Exactly.
that's something else.
And when they left, I'm getting choked up.
Yeah, I know,
can
me
just
too.
talk
I know.
about it. I thought,
Jesus
this
God
is
Almighty,
what
man.
makes my job
Yeah.
so wonderful, is, doing that for the young lady from China.
Real people, man.
And they
Real
came
people, and you see
all the way
you
from
see
China.
the passion, man.
And they weren't going to D.C.,
No.
New York.
No.
He brought her here just because. Now, at 10 years ago, it wasn't that easy to travel out of mainland China.
No.
So I don't know what connections this guy had, but he was just so grateful. When he
That's
left,
something else.
I started getting choked up, and I
Yeah,
thought, wow,
that
this is what does it for me.
yeah, and what you've done, those people, that family will remember that the rest of their lives. And you might have a famous poet knocking on your door. I'm telling you.
Well, I'm not at the Poe House anymore, but
Yes.
I thought, Jeff, this is why you are here. This is why you are here. But before I forget, again,
Yes.
I keep going in all directions. I want to tell your audience and you that this Saturday, coming
Yes.
Saturday,
Yes.
October 10th,
October 10th.
is a special event at the Westminster Graveyard called Poe is Dead.
Whoa.
Now, Poe died October 7th, which is Wednesday, this coming Wednesday or Thursday?
Yeah.
But whatever. He died this week.
Right.
But we're having live broadcast from the Poe grave.
Okay.
Because of COVID, everything is live now,
Yeah.
or recorded. And normally we have a birthday cake, not a birthday cake, but a death cake.
Yeah.
And we have several actors at the Poe Monument.
Oh, it's so great.
But we're not allowed to have people
Yeah.
gathering in the graveyard. So we're going to film it live in the Westminster Catacombs. And we have a local actor, Tony Sandias, who's been
I love that guy.
Isn't he great?
I love that guy.
I don't know why he isn't
Jesus.
making movies in Hollywood.
I'm serious. Because the way I tell you, this guy, he goes, he comes out. He goes, I'm going to show you how it is to dress, and he takes his collar up and he goes, how I look like a crazy man.
He's assuming the persona of like the narrator in the Telltale Heart.
Exactly.
So he comes out as Tony the actor, and then he starts getting dressed, and then he tells the audience, count in your mind from 1 to 10, and by the time you get to 10, I will be the narrator in the Telltale Heart. Okay. No other actor does that. So he'll be doing the Telltale Heart and reading the Raven in the catacombs, and this is live. And you have to go to your Facebook page and enter Edgar Allan Poe Evermore. And it starts at 4 o'clock and it will run about 45 minutes. Now, normally we do like an hour, but because of COVID and all of that stuff, it's going to be about 45 minutes. And we will come out from the catacombs, go to the Poe Monument, where we will lay flowers on the Poe grave.
And when this is again?
This Saturday, October 10th at 4 p.m. So please don't come down to the graveyard, okay? We won't be able to let you in. But watch it on Facebook, and this is our first live event.
That's just great.
And it's going to be exciting, nerve-wracking, but it's going to be fun.
I'll tell you.
So check it out. And you don't have to sign up. It's not Zoom or anything like that. You don't have to pay for it. All you do is just go to our website, Edgar Allan Poe Evermore, and there you go. You can watch us. And listen, you guys better be watching also. You're going to love it.
You hear that, Red? You hear that, Red?
And this guy next to me can attest to what we do with Poe. And the acting and everything else that we do.
I tell you, Jesus, it's once you're in, you're in. That's it, because you can't get out. Once you're grubby and you're grubby. Because the entertainment's great. And I tell you what, it's done so well. Jesus whiz. Man.
So what else do you want to know about Poe?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'd like to know what a couple people ask me these things. Down where the horse you came in on, is that where he died?
No.
See that?
No, Poe had nothing to do with the horse you came in on. They say it was his last drink was taken there, that he would go there to drink his last meal before he went home.
Yeah, because I was bouncing the Leadbetters and walking across the street. The bouncer said this is where he fell.
And they over the years they told people that he died in the gutter outside.
Yeah.
It's all publicity stunt. And you know what bothers me is they don't have to do that. The place is exciting as it is.
As it is.
As it is, the oldest bar in the country, or universe, or something like that.
Yeah.
And they had to latch on Poe, but Poe had nothing to do with that tavern. They've actually told people that Jack Daniels was Poe's favorite drink.
Wow.
Jack Daniels was created 1865.
Yeah.
So
that's like way after. That's.
So I'm not picking on the place. Like I said, I've been there a few times, and it's got history there.
Yes.
But it doesn't have Poe.
No.
No. Also, Fells Point in that time period was huge.
Yes, it was.
You go there now, and one or two streets.
Yeah.
But I remember as a child, in the late 50s, we would go down to Lombard Street, the Jewish market, and
we used to go there,
buy bagels, and I would look at all
we
the
would get chickens killed live, right there live.
Yes, and
bless all of us.
And then we would drive down to Fells Point to look at the tugboats, because as little children, we'd look at the boats, And I remember it was large.
This is true.
It was.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah, it was very large. And in Poe's time period, that was the center of town.
That sure was.
And it wasn't a very good part of town.
Very dangerous. Mob town, man.
Yeah. And you're talking about being shanghaied. There's a practice during election called cooping.
Oh, yeah.
And this is what we think happened to Poe.
Listen.
Okay? When Poe left Richmond to go home to New York, Baltimore was a transfer point. He took the boat to Baltimore, then took the train to or supposed to take the train to Philadelphia, then New York.
Right.
Gets off in Baltimore, disappears. We don't know what happened to him. Then someone who knew him was walking on the street, and this was at night, and saw Poe wearing delirious, wearing someone else's clothing. But Poe was conscious enough to tell this person that he knows a Dr. Snodgrass down the street. So this guy, Mr. Walker, sent a note to Dr. Snodgrass saying, "There's a gentleman rather worse for wear at this polling place. He says he knows you and he needs your help." So Dr. Snodgrass gets Poe's cousin Nielsen Poe, and they come, they see Poe, they take him to the hospital, and he dies several days later. We think one of the main theories about Poe's death...
Excuse me 1 second,
Sure.
because I have to... I got Betsy Bootsy out there, and we're telling these stories, and she's getting scared, so hold on 1 second. Please continue the story.
So, anyway, it was election time in Baltimore, and there was a practice called cooping. Now, this happened in all the cities, not just Baltimore. And the way it would work is, if you were running for office and you were dishonest, now imagine that, a dishonest politician. Thank goodness we don't have to deal with that today. But in that time period, if you were running for office and you were dishonest, you would hire the police or thugs, and they would go out and kidnap people and coop them up in the basement of a building. And what they would do is use you as a repeat voter. Now, in order for this to work, before they would take you around the city and vote, the election judge had to be in on it. But you had to insulate the election judge from this. So what you would do is, say I was cooped. The first time they would vote me, I looked like this. The second time, they would shave off my beard, change my clothing. That way the election judge could say, "I never saw him before, he can vote." And then they would do this continuously all through the day and evening. And then when they would start the loop again, change the clothing. And the election judge would say, "I never saw him before, he can vote." Now, when they got to the point where I couldn't even hold a pen or a pencil, what they used, or I started fighting, or I passed out, they would dump you out on the street. They found Poe just a few feet from a polling place. Now, there are many theories about Poe's death, and they all have holes in them. Some have big holes that you could drive a Mack truck through, but cooping has a few holes in it that, puts down on it. But out of all the 22 theories about Poe's death, cooping is the one that most scholars agree upon. That would explain the soiled clothing, the changed clothing, and being found near a polling place. But remember, it's just a theory. So he was recognized. They took him to the hospital. The doctor, Dr. Moran, thought he was drunk at first because it was election time. But the doctor later stated that there was no alcoholic breath or odor about Poe's body. Well, that's what the doctor said. So when Poe died, the official cause of death was congestion of the brain. Ooh. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. It was the term that doctors created when the cause of death was unknown. No doctor would put unknown as the cause of death, because they would say, "Don't you know what you're doing? You're a doctor." So they would make something up. Now, unfortunately, if there were any hospital records, they've long disappeared, because when Poe died in 1849 at the Washington Medical College, which later became Church Home Hospital, many of you know where that is, no longer a hospital. About 2 years later, the hospital closed. It closed so quickly that the doctors left the tools, they left the bodies, the bones, the paperwork. So if there was a death certificate, it has long disappeared. As a result, all we have are these theories. And it's funny. Every year there's a new theory. Just as stupid, just as silly as the previous one. So we'll never know what happened to Poe. And sometimes I think about it, Poe would probably be very happy with that. Poe would be very happy with that because it keeps interest in Poe, it keeps the mystery alive. But you know something, I really wish I knew what happened to Poe.
I'll tell you, so do I, because every time I drive down Broadway and I see the old hospital, I know that the one deck, he was on that one deck, and I'm thinking of the old wicker, how the old wicker wheelchairs were and whatnot, and wow.
Well, he didn't have a very happy death. Not that death should be happy, but it wasn't peaceful. It was tragic. He was calling out names and incoherent. And when he was lucid, the doctor would say, "Do you know how you got here?" "No." "Do you know what happened to you?" "No."
No.
And then he would go back and lapse into hallucinations. Now I'm not saying in my lifetime I got so drunk that I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I've only heard that if you drink too much, you really get sick the next day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, with Poe, if he was drinking too much, he would have felt better the next day.
Yeah.
But for several days in the hospital, he would go from, like, "Where am I?" to raving and sweating and yelling, and then he would seem to calm down. This isn't a symptom of
Alcohol.
exactly. Now,
Sounds like poisoning to me.
Well, it's not. We're not saying he didn't have alcohol because
Right.
they used alcohol as medicine.
They sure
Yeah.
did.
So the doctors, and this is another theory, the doctors may have contributed to Poe's death by giving him medicine, alcoholic in nature, thinking, well, this will calm him down. Sometimes doctors used opium, and if you were swinging and screaming, they would give you opium, and you would calm down. They would say, "Hey, this is working.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
keep giving it to him." So the doctors may have contributed to Poe's death. The point is, we don't know what happened to Poe. Oh, and he was not found in the gutter. Stop saying that. Stop saying that.
There you go. That's what everybody's. Oh yeah, because the front of the horse, like I said, the front of the horse. But tell me this: he's not found in the gutter. We should know that as a fact. But all the questions I get: what bars did he frequent? You think in Baltimore?
Well, now see, here's the thing: he wasn't living in Baltimore at that time.
Okay.
He was living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And when he lived in New York and Philadelphia, he didn't go out drinking.
Right.
Now,
right.
sometimes he would meet friends, but again, they didn't have restaurants the way we do now.
Right.
The tavern, the bars, is where the food was.
That's true.
Okay?
That's true.
So, but when he died in Baltimore, he wasn't living here. He moved out 1835. So you can't say, well, what bars did he go to? He didn't. He didn't.
Because I hear that a lot, and everybody thinks he went down Fells Point. Everybody.
But, well, see, when someone says, yeah, Fells Point, he was there all the time. No, he wasn't. Even when he lived in Baltimore, 1832, 1835, he didn't go out carousing, drinking, going to Fells Point. It just didn't happen. So this is one of the myths about Poe. It's very easy to say, oh yeah, the man was a drunk, took dope, took LSD, hallucinated. He was obsessed with death and darkness, dead bodies, corpses, premature burial, being buried alive. That's the that's the legend of Edgar Allan Poe. Like I said before, he was a nice guy, and he did have health problems. He did have a problem with alcohol, but to say that he was an alcoholic, drinking all the time, it's not true. And when Edgar Allan Poe sat down to write, every word, every sentence, every punctuation mark, every paragraph meant something in his stories. Okay? And he could not write the way he wrote if he was drunk or high. You just can't do it. And like I said, everything that he wrote had a purpose. And he didn't sit down and, for example, one night and go, oh, the Raven, yeah, I got to write this. And he would write it, and there it was. sometimes these stories took months to write, and he was always changing it, revising it. The Raven, for example, at one point he said that the Raven was 10 years hatching in his brain. Okay, now if we are to believe that, that means that for 10 years he was thinking of writing a poem that would make him famous. That when people read it, they would say, "Oh, Edgar Allan Poe." And The Raven was that poem for him. His nickname became The Raven. He earned, I think it was $14 for The Raven. Made him an international
Wow.
hit, but no money.
Jeez,
So, Poe was...
Nicole says hi.
Hello, Nicole. So Poe was a starving artist, is what we
Yeah.
call him. Yeah. But he tried to be the best he could be. He tried to persevere, and he paid the price for it.
Boy, I'll tell you what.
But you know the sad thing, aside from him dying,
Yeah.
he was engaged to a childhood sweetheart,
Oh, boy, yeah.
and he got a job offer from this man near Chicago. This man inherited his father's newspaper. And he wrote to Poe saying, "Listen, I want you to manage, to publish, to edit this newspaper. Name your price." I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Of course.
"Name your price. You're the boss. I'm just going to sit back and you run this newspaper. You do it." And Poe got this letter going and he's thinking, holy cow, this is
Yeah.
what I wanted. My entire life, this is what I wanted.
Yeah.
No interference from the publisher, nobody telling me what to do.
Jeez, it was.
Married to my childhood sweetheart, a good paying job, and he died in Baltimore.
Oh, man.
Just when things were looking good.
Yeah.
That's the tragic part about Poe's death. And
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
you know, I don't know. I'm
There's
getting so
much
excited.
Yeah,
I'm losing
I'll
my
tell you,
voice,
I'm just sitting here. I had to check on Betsy because, you know, she's out there and, you know, she has to go to the laboratory once in a while.
I
But I
know the
could
feeling,
sit
yeah.
here, I could sit, as you see, we could sit and talk. And I tell you, right now, guys, I'm trying to pick you up on the phone over here because we got it live. Like I told you, I had a surprise. And I'm looking, and I'm looking. So what I do is I see where we're at, and we got Nicole Galino and Sean Luby.
Oh, I know Nicole. Hello,
Yeah.
Nicole.
Hi, Nicole. Hey, Sean Luby.
I know that person.
Yeah.
You know her too?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Small world. How
Small
about that?
boiled.
Yes,
Small boiled.
I'll tell you.
Yes. And Sean Luby is a great guitarist with the Minaldi brothers. Oh man, I tell you, this is freaking great. Jesus whiz. I'm trying to find it because we have the main screen TV, and two of my great. Nicole says two of my favorite guys.
Yep.
Well, that's very nice. That's right. That's right. That's right. And I tell you, this has been a good surprise, and it's just unfolding because, and we all, the Savage Dream. I told you I didn't want to give away any of the secrets. I don't know nothing, but I wanted to surprise you, and this is a great surprise. So I bring my dear friend Jeff Jerome out here, and for the special reason. Did you tell him the special reason?
No.
No.
What's the special reason?
Why you're here?
Why am I here?
Survey says. The announcement on the 10th of the Saturday. It's going to be terrific. It's going to be great.
Poe is dead.
Poe is
Is the
dead.
name of the event.
Yes. Yes.
And like I said, it's free. You don't have to sign up for anything. All you have to do is go to Facebook. Edgar
No, we're still going.
Edgar Allan Poe Evermore. And at 4 o'clock, it will be live. Sounds funny saying live from the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be live with the dead people around.
It's okay.
And we're doing The Telltale Heart, The Raven with Tony Sandias. I'll be talking about Poe's death again. And then we will end the event with a wreath-laying ceremony at the Poe Monument.
Bada bang. Boy,
And
that's
we've been doing this since the early '82, and
Boy,
it's
I
been a
tell you,
tradition. And
it's-
even when I left the city,
I know.
I
It's
thought,
always-
hey, this it's over with. But you know, Ron, I had so many people saying, You can't stop.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you got to do it.
Yeah,
And-
I wouldn't. It couldn't be thought of. I mean, adamantly they would do that. I mean, seriously, it's like saying, "What do you mean I can't put up a Christmas tree for Christmas?" That's, I mean, the same ardor, man. I'm like, you know, it's unbelievable.
The public loves it,
The public loves it.
and it's unique because there's no other post city that can do this.
No.
Because we've got his body, we've got the graveyard, and
We got it all.
And you know, it's
I
going to
tell
be
you.
fun. You got to tune in, and 10 o'clock, October 10th. Did I say October 10th?
October 10th,
right?
at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Two
No,
10s.
no,
No?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Did I say 10 a.m.?
Yes.
Yeah. 4 o'clock. October 10th.
Right.
4 o'clock. Okay?
But-
I get so excited.
I get excited
you
too,
know-
but make sure you're up by 10 so you know what's going on.
right.
How's that
There
one?
you go.
And folks, I want you to look out also for the Savage Stream and Jeff Jerome as guests. And it's going to be great because we're also going to be on the Tube of You. This, what you see here, will be on the Tube of You. And we're also going to do some other broadcasting tonight that I'm going to take home and editing. So, see, we're still live. And see, that's what I was doing with the Pat McDonough show. This is the new Facebook. You know what I say? No, but I'm keeping on the Disney Channel. But you all take care, and I thank you so much for your eyes. And the ones that see this, tell them to go on my page because it's there waiting for them. And then after that, you got to tell them, oh yeah, there's also going to be other YouTube stories. I'm not going to say, but watch. But it's going to be the Savage Mode, the Jeff Mode, and I tell you, go on. We always do that. So you guys take care. Thanks a lot, and keep it up because this is Late Night with Ron Savage.